Get everyone logged in here and we'll begin here momentarily. Welcome, everyone. It's exciting to see that number tick up.
I was watching it as well.
We'll wait till it hits a steady number. How does that sound? All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We're here at the top of the hour. Welcome everyone to today's National Employer webinar entitled Able Accounts, a new tool to support people with disabilities, your employees, and your community. This webinar is co-hosted by the Society of Human Resource Management, or SHRM, and the National Association of State Treasurers Able Today program. Again, good afternoon. I am Sarah Hart-Weir. I'm a senior advisor for the Able Today team and will be serving as one of your moderators for today's webinar. Just before we get started in terms of our presentation, I just wanted to provide just a few general housekeeping items for all of our attendees. First and foremost, we are very grateful to have our ASL interpreters with us this afternoon, Jennifer and Carol from CSD. Just by way of introduction, CSD Learns continues to be a very valuable partner to Able Today through our partnership with Wells Fargo. In addition to providing real-time ASL for today's national webinar, we also work with CSD and Wells Fargo to provide educational materials and information in People First ASL language in both English and Spanish through our Able Today website, and we'll certainly share that resource with you today. Today's webinar will be recorded and it will be posted in the very near future on our Able Today website, which is www.abletoday.org. And we will also make sure that these materials and webinar are available on our Pledge Inclusion website, which Andrew will talk more about here momentarily. We will also have our chat box open and available to you for questions as we continue today's discussion. So please feel free to drop in a question or a comment. Our team of SHRM and Able experts will be actively monitoring today's chat and be responding in real time. Earlier this year, Able Today, SHRM, and the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy, or ODEP, partnered together to launch the 2023 Disability Inclusion Pledge. This groundbreaking initiative between the three organizations and with the Department of Labor really aims to provide HR professionals and business executives with the necessary resources and tools to create more inclusive workplaces for disabled workers. As part of that, we are working hard to ensure that information on how to incorporate ABLE accounts as part of your DEIA strategy is included for both employees with disabilities, as well as information is made available to family members and caregivers. Today's session is really a first of its kind webinar to engage the employer community. We really hope you walk away from today's session with a couple of different pieces of information. We hope you understand the benefits of ABLE accounts and how these accounts can support people with disabilities, their family members, and caregivers. We're going to talk about, Betty Ann's going to talk about this momentarily, but how ABLE accounts can be incorporated into your company-wide DEIA strategy and how ABLE accounts can work as a workplace benefit. And then certainly we want to illustrate ways employers can offer ABLE accounts as a benefit in the workplace, obviously to continue to help promote disability inclusion and hopefully attract new talent. As I said later in the presentation, Betty Ann will also provide some more information on how you and or your employer can work directly with our team here to help incorporate ABLE in your workplace. So let's go to the next slide. We are joined by three extraordinary leaders and representatives from our ABLE programs across the country to help provide and present more information on what ABLE accounts are and how to utilize those. But before I introduce our three guest speakers, I'm really excited to introduce Andrew Aragon from SHRM. Andrew is a tremendous leader at SHRM, and not only just a leader at the organization and the association, but he remains just a tremendous champion for the disability community. Just a little bit more background about Andrew. He serves as a senior advisor of the Public Policy and Government Affairs team at SHRM. Prior to that, Andrew worked as a business development for a political tech startup in Washington, D.C. And he also worked for a U.S. House of Representatives as a congressional staffer from New Mexico's Congressman Pierce. And during his tenure on the Hill, he managed the healthcare, labor, and workforce development legislative portfolios. Andrew, I'm going to turn it over to you to help also welcome everyone to today's session, talk more about our partnership, our pledge inclusion, and how you can continue to engage with both SHRM and ABLE today as part of your efforts. So Andrew?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. Before I dive in on SHRM or me, I do want to thank Sarah and ABLE today for being such incredible partners in the 2023 Disability and Inclusion Pledge. And I'll touch on that a little bit more. But thank you to the ABLE Today team and NAST for putting this on today. It's very much appreciated. And again, you've been incredible partners. I'm very grateful to be here. So thank you for having me. Like Sarah mentioned, my name is Andrew Aragon. I'm a senior advisor of public policy and government affairs at SHRM. Just to give a very brief overview of SHRM, and we can actually go to the next slide. SHRM is a trade association. We're made up of both HR professionals and business executives. We are this year celebrating the 75th anniversary as an organization and really trying to plot the path for change and positive change. And because our members touch on all things work, workers, and workplace, it came naturally that we wanted to partner with ABLE Today and NAST, especially when it comes to increasing awareness of what ABLE accounts are, who's eligible, and how to include those in your benefits as an employer to really differentiate yourself and make yourself, and at least help with the recruitment efforts when it comes to employees with disabilities. So, like I mentioned, SHRM is about 325,000 members in 165 countries. And because we are made up of HR professionals and business executives, we're just through our work touching the lives of a little over 235 million Americans. So that's 1 in 3 Americans. So we're very grateful to have the platform that we do. We don't take it lightly, and we know that this is a great opportunity to increase awareness on ABLE Today, a national ABLE program, and what it means and why it's important to employers. I mentioned earlier the 2023 Disability Inclusion Pledge, and I do want to touch on that a little bit more. And before this ends today, we'll provide a little bit more information. So we can go to the next slide. So this year, as Sarah mentioned, SHRM, in partnership with Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy and ABLE Today, launched this pledge. Now, the 2023 pledge is it's an iteration of what was originally launched in 2021 as a campaign for SHRM affiliates to have access to the resources that they need to build more inclusive workplaces for folks with disabilities. Now, we saw a lot of SHRM affiliates actively taking on those resources and building out really successful programs within their organizations. And we realized that we wanted to open it up to more than just SHRM affiliates. So in 2023, we gathered resources from SHRM, the SHRM Foundation, the 501c3 arm of SHRM, as well as Able Today, and compiled those in one place so that any HR professional, any individual, any organization has access to those resources for free should they decide to build out the programs that will make them more attractive to employees with disabilities. So we're very, very proud of our partnership with Able Today. We're very grateful for our work together with ODEP. And if you would like to learn more about the Inclusion Pledge, you can visit pledgeinclusion.shrm.org. And there you'll find several resources from SHRM, SHRM Foundation, Able Today, and ODEP to build out those programs. Now, just off the top, something that SHRM is very grateful for is just how well resourced we are, especially when it comes to having our finger on the pulse of today's workers, workplaces, and work. So in last year, the SHRM research team actually did a survey of HR professionals and people managers on their interactions, their experiences with employees with disabilities. And I think a high level takeaway and something that has been very impactful in my work is that we found that when asked, 97% of HR professionals and people managers said that employees with disabilities are as productive, if not more, than their colleagues without. And we realize that there are a lot of impediments for employees with disabilities to actively take a full part in the workforce. So we wanted to do our part to reduce those barriers and allow folks with disabilities to enter the workforce, have access to all the same benefits and tools that they deserve. So again, this is why we're very grateful for our work with Able Today and ODEP. Now, I do want to touch briefly before I hand it back over to Sarah on why Able is important for employers. And we can actually go to the next slide here. Something that we strive to do, and especially in this campaign and in our work with Able Today, is we want to make HR professionals and employers of any and all sizes aware of, one, what Able accounts are, who's eligible, and we encourage all employers to offer these Able accounts as a benefit. It's an incredible way to diversify your benefit offerings. It differentiates you as an employer and makes you much more attractive to what is otherwise an untapped talent pool. I think especially as employers across the country are trying to get creative in how they handle talent shortages, a lot don't realize that they may not be doing enough to reach out to folks with disabilities. This is an incredibly productive part of our workforce. They're ready, able, and willing to work. And there are ways, especially for employers that offer Able accounts, to become more attractive and to bring in the folks from that talent pool. So that's one of the biggest goals for today's webinar. But with that, I do want to hand it back to Sarah.
Thank you, Andrew. And Chris, we can go on to the next slide. Really excited for everyone just to have more of an opportunity to learn about what SHRM does and why our partnership is so vitally important. I also wanted to take a moment and just tell you a little bit more about Able Today. Able Today is part of the National Association of State Treasurers Foundation. And our mission is pretty simple, is to promote Able accounts, financial empowerment, and community inclusion for people with disabilities. Last year, we launched this new program, Able Today, with the generous support of our founding sponsor, Wells Fargo. And just to add a little bit more excitement to the work that we continue to do, Our Able Today employer programming is also supported by the generous support of two other key partners, both Vestwell and Transamerica. Through Able Today, we provide free education and outreach centered around ABLE accounts, and we're honored to work with our state ABLE programs and leaders like Dante, Linda, Betty Ann, and so many others, as well as stakeholders like you to help continue to make the National ABLE program grow. The next slide, please. For those of you who are learning about ABLE accounts and the National ABLE program for the first time, I did just want to take a moment and also acknowledge the historical effort that really helped make ABLE a reality. The creation for the ABLE program was spurred from a longstanding advocacy push from the disability community to establish a way for people with disabilities to save money for the future without putting necessary benefits like Medicaid and SSI in jeopardy. I had the honor to work on the ABLE Act, or I have had the honor to work on the ABLE Act since 2006, and was very honored to help lead the large coalition of advocates and self-advocates and disability organizations during my tenure at the National Down Syndrome Society to help get the ABLE Act signed into law. This advocacy effort took 8 years and four Congresses to get done across the finish line. But when it did pass, it was one of the most bipartisan laws of all time. I often say that 85% of the entire Congress supported its passage, and this law has been hailed as the most significant disability rights legislation since the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act in the 1990s. This slide in front of you just demonstrates the breadth of support, advocacy, and attention that helped make the ABLE Act happen. Again, before I turn it over to our speakers, if we go to the next slide, the team and our co-host today, we wanted to just take a moment to give you a sense of the data behind the National ABLE program and ABLE Network. The first ABLE account was opened up in June of 2016 in Ohio. And since then, we have had over 144,000 ABLE accounts opened. And this number continues to grow every day, especially thanks to the outreach and the hard work of our state partners and other stakeholders in presentations like this that reach people where they are. According to our NAST data, across those 144,000 ABLE accounts, we have $1.39 billion in assets under management across the entire ABLE landscape. As someone who's fought so hard for the ABLE Act's passage, it's incredible to see the tremendous growth. But again, as we're gathered here this afternoon, we know we have so much more to do, and that's why we're here today. Andrew, I'm going to let you talk through the next slide about the webinar outcomes and goals today, and then we'll dive right in.
Sure, and thank you, Sarah. I know that both Sarah and I have touched on this, but I think an overarching goal of this entire campaign, but especially this webinar today, is just awareness. We want everyone here to be aware of what the ABLE program is, who's eligible, what it looks like to contribute to ABLE accounts, how those who are eligible can spend or withdraw the funds within them. And then finally, we want to make everyone here aware of the resources that are currently available, either through SHRM, the SHRM Foundation, ODEP, Able Today. We're doing our part to make sure that these resources are available, and we want to spread awareness that they are available and that they're pretty easy to access. So with that, I'll let Sarah introduce the speakers for today.
Great. So on the next slide, you're going to see and hear more about our three incredible speakers and friends. We have Dante Allen, who is the Executive Director of CalABLE, where he is responsible for the strategic direction and operations of the California ABLE program, which launched in December of 2018. Prior to CalABLE, Dante served in a leadership role with California's Department of Public Health in their Office of Health Equity. In January of this year, Dante was nominated by President Joe Biden to serve as the commissioner of the Rehabilitative Services Administration, and he is currently awaiting confirmation by the U.S. Senate. So we're very fortunate to have Dante with us this afternoon. We also have Linda Fernandez, who is the director of Texas ABLE. Linda is in charge of and provides support to the Texas Prepaid Higher Education Tuition Board, chaired by Comptroller Hager, and administrating the state's prepaid tuition plans, college savings plans, and the Texas ABLE program. Linda has over 40 years of experience with the state of Texas, has been appointed to an important post by Governor Abbott, and is an active member of our NAST committees and the ABLE network. Last but certainly not least, here we have Betty Ann Mobley, from the director of the Maryland ABLE program. She also serves as the vice chair of ASPEN, which is our ABLE program network for NAST. Betty Ann has worked with state and national organizations in the field of intellectual and developmental disabilities for more than 42 years. She served in the role with the state of Maryland's ABLE program for the last 5.5 years. And she is also a very active member of NAST, ASPEN, and all of our outreach efforts, including co-leads with myself, our employer work group for ABLE. So I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Dante to dive right in. Dante?
Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you, ABLE Today, for inviting me to be a part of today's presentation. And I thought we would start off by me asking you to close your eyes for a moment and just imagine. And imagine whether or not, if people with disabilities could save money in their own names, and more than just that basic minimum, that they could accumulate their wealth without losing their eligibility for benefits, and that they could work without having to spend down their current or future income. As a person with a disability that was born a few decades ago, my parents were told, what many parents of children with disabilities are told, is make sure that you never save any money in the name of your child. And that was valuable information, because if that child with a disability was ever to be on government benefits, any money that you saved in their own names could be an impediment for them to be able to qualify or maintain those benefits. But that was before the Federal ABLE Act. And the Federal ABLE Act allowed individuals with disabilities to move from this idea of planning on a month-to-month basis to planning for a lifetime when it comes to their financial aspects. And the way that I describe it is it's helping folks move from teetering on that brink of sustainability to being able to plan for a profitable and engaging future. And so ABLE accounts make this possible. If you could go to the next slide. So what is an ABLE account? So technically, an ABLE account is a savings and investment tool built specifically for people with disabilities that allow them to save money without impacting their public benefits. It is an empowerment tool. It is designed that the money in these ABLE accounts belong to that individual with a disability. And if they have the desire and the capacity to be in control of that money, ABLE accounts make that all a reality. The ABLE accounts come from Section 529A of the U.S. Tax Code. And so it is very much a financial tool that works a lot differently than other laws that were designed to aid people with disabilities in their livelihoods. Next slide. So who's eligible to open an ABLE account? Well, first and foremost, you have to have a disability that began before your 26th birthday in order to be an eligible individual. Now, you can open an ABLE account at any age as long as you have a disability that began before age 26. Now, that disability must be long-term, meaning that it's expected to last a year or longer, and it must cause a marked and severe functional limitation. You are eligible automatically if you have qualified for SSI or SSDI, or you can do something where you can certify yourself if a doctor has diagnosed you with a physical or mental disability. So you do not have to be a federal benefits recipient in order to be eligible for an ABLE account. Next slide. So how do you get started with one of these accounts? It's really pretty simple. Almost every ABLE program of those 46 plus the District of Columbia offer online enrollment. So it's meant to be a very easy process, but you may want to do some exploring before you decide to open up an ABLE account, because there are varying programs. And even though there are lots of similarities, there are some differences. And so you can find your ABLE program, the one that will best suit you, by going to ABLE Today. And that is go to abletoday.org/ABLE-programs for more info. Like I said, most programs, probably, if not all, nearly all programs allow you to sign up from anywhere you are online. There are a few programs where you can even go into a bank branch and enroll, or there are some that allow for paper applications. Enrollment is very flexible. The individual with the disability can open the account for themselves and can manage that money if they are the owners of all of the money that is in the account, or they can designate a support person, a representative, to oversee the account management if they are unable or unwilling to manage the account themselves. So next slide, please. So how much can you contribute to an ABLE account? ABLE accounts have annual contribution limits, primarily based on the IRS gift tax exclusion and whether or not the individual with the disability is employed or not. If so, all ABLE accounts allow contribution of up to $17,000 per year based on the IRS gift tax exemption, and that is per account. Now, contributions can come from all sources, including family, friends, organizations, nonprofits, and employers, but the total amount that goes into that account in a single year cannot exceed $17,000 unless the individual, the person with the disability, the owner of the account, is working and not participating in an employer-based retirement account. There's a component called Able to Work that actually allows individuals who are working to contribute from their own salary up to the federal poverty level for the state that they're living in. And so that could increase that $17,000 per year annual contribution limit to go up to $30,590 if you live in the 48 contiguous states or DC, or it can go even higher if you live in Hawaii or Alaska to up to $33,990. Again, that is if the ABLE account holder is working, not participating in a workplace-based retirement account. In addition to the $17,000, they can also put in over $13,000 dollars into their ABLE account. Now, there is a maximum contribution limit for most ABLE programs, and it actually goes a lot higher than what you can put in a single year, up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So programs, their balance limits differ by states. Here in California, where we have CalABLE, we've modeled our savings limit to up to 529,000, that 529 mirroring the IRS tax code where the ABLE Act comes from. So you can actually go up to $500,000. There are some things that will limit you, and we'll talk about that in just a few slides, but I will turn it over to my colleague to continue the presentation.
Thank you, Dante. This is Linda Fernandez from the Texas program, and I'd like to thank ABLE today for allowing us to join today's webinar, and thank you to everyone that is participating. So greetings from the rather hot state of Texas right now. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we talk a little bit about the flexible withdrawal options that you have for an ABLE account. ABLE account owners have online access to their accounts where they can monitor their account activity, and they can also initiate withdrawals from those accounts. So some programs will offer a checkbook option. Almost all programs offer an option where you can issue a check request through your ABLE account to pay a provider directly. You can also request an ACH transfer to either a personal checking or savings account, and also to a debit card, which is offered by many of our ABLE programs. Next slide, please. So you'll see the broad categories that the Internal Revenue Code has approved for people to spend for qualified disability expenses of the beneficiary. They include housing and rent, assistive technology, basic living expenses, financial management expenses, transportation, health and wellness, education, and legal fees. And so one of the important things about an ABLE account, in addition to being able to put more money aside for savings, is that if you spend these monies on qualified disability expenses, any earnings on the money through investments are tax-free. So that's a very nice advantage. So an ABLE account may be used to pay for qualified disability expenses that relate to the beneficiary's disability and are for the benefit of maintaining or improving the beneficiary's health, independence, or quality of life. And qualified disability expenses are not limited to expenses for which there is a medical necessity. Next slide, please. So when you put money into an ABLE account, you have to designate where that money will be invested. So a variety of investment options are available to people through these different programs, but generally most programs are going to offer some form of FDIC insured checking or savings account. And they'll also offer portfolios that consist of market-based investment options such as stocks and bonds. The investment options will range from very conservative options for people that are risk adverse all the way up to aggressive investment options for people that are willing to take on a higher risk. And the account owner can pick from one or more of the investment options that are offered by these various plans. The existing funds in an ABLE account can only be moved to a different investment option up to twice a year by federal law. But each time they make a deposit into their ABLE account, they have the option to change that investment option if they so choose. Each one of these states, ABLE states, if you go out to their program website, they will have program disclosure statements on their website. telling you all about their programs, all about their investment options. So a lot of opportunities out there for people to decide how they want to invest those funds. So with that, I will turn it over to Betty Ann Mobley, who's the program administrator of the Maryland ABLE program. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Next slide, please. So it's really exciting to be before you employers as an audience for this particular seminar. If you think about it, Andrew said earlier that SHRM and its membership has 1 in 3 Americans touched by its workers. Well, we can tell you that 1 in 5 people is either a person with a disability or a caregiver of a person with a disability, which is why it is so important that you connect and understand the benefits of ABLE and how they can help you as a company. If you think about the history of people with disabilities, there haven't been a lot of encouragements or supports for them to work because, as was described earlier by Dante, people have only been able to keep around $2,000 or less before risking losing critical benefits. And there are many people with disabilities who'd love to not even be on federal or state benefit programs, but because of the limitations and the opportunities to work, it's been a challenge for them as they've moved ahead. So let's just stop and think about the magnitude of impact that you as employers can have. There's currently approximately 8 million people with disabilities who would be eligible for this program today. 8 million, and yet right now we only have 144,000, a little bit more nationwide. So the impact that you can help with creating opportunities for people that are part of your workplace is amazing. And in addition to that 8 million, when in fact the Age Adjustment Act or that increased age 46 goes into effect, there will be 14 million, almost double the number of people that would have the opportunity to utilize an account like this. And if you think about the economic impact to people, just stop and listen to these next few figures. People with disabilities are sometimes not seen as potentially economically contributing parts of our communities. And yet people with disabilities have the opportunity for about $645 billion in disposable income. Think about that for a moment. $645, but with all these limitations they have placed upon them in order to receive critical benefits that they need to be successful in their communities, they haven't been able to save this money. They haven't been able to utilize this money for things that may further their futures as someone who's independent. So ABLE has given them that opportunity. So if you think about the people, we said 1 in 5 people are either a person with a disability or a caregiver, and you look at the amount of money that adds up to, you could look at the people who support a person, who are part of a person's life, and the person with the disabilities having about $8 trillion in global purchasing power. Think about that. Some of that would probably come back to many of your businesses and industries as a result of having an ABLE account and the opportunity to save money that they can use for things they've never been able to afford before. If you think about the fact that you have a workforce of people who may have self-disclosed disabilities, and then another group of people who may not self-disclose disabilities, you may be overlooking the fact that 39.8 million caregivers provide care to adults with a disability. That's 16.6% of Americans, 16.76% of Americans. And many of those caregivers are your employees. So important to understand this program. Dante explained the fact that SSI in particular has this limitation of $2,000 in any point in that person's life of having in their own name, unless they have an ABLE account or other tools, perhaps like a trust. And so when we look at that pool of people who may be eligible, we can see that about 67% of our account holders currently have SSI or SSDI and are subject to that. Now, that doesn't take into account things like HUD vouchers, SNAP benefits, Medicaid, and other benefits that are critical in the life of a person with a disability. Here's where ABLE is a really great resource and can help. Let's talk about why it's important to think about ABLE at work. Next slide, please. Well, here's the first thing, and it's going to be, I was going to say they're all on there, aren't they? Here's the one thing that you need to think about as an employer is embracing the ABLE program and being able to share information about ABLE has no cost to you as an employer, because we can provide training and all kinds of things for your organization and the materials that you could use to help provide this awareness for people. It's an easy program for people to start. And the best thing is you don't have any of the lift. Once that information is shared, it all comes back to us as a state program to help and support that account holder to be able to enroll. And people with disabilities will tell you that enrolling or accessing programs can oftentimes be a nightmare in their lives. It can take months and years to be eligible for benefits. And that's a really quick benefit that we have to provide, because Dante explained to you that, or I believe it was Linda, I'm sorry, about banks or where you can enroll at. Mostly it is online. And if you do it online, for the most part, it takes 15 to 20 minutes. And it is not an approval process in the same way that many other programs for people with disabilities incur. So it's a really blessed kind of opportunity for people to finally have a benefit that they can get very easily and not have to struggle so much. As you think about your typical employee and how you support them and how you offer a benefits package that's attractive and gets them to want to be a part of your workforce, you oftentimes offer retirement savings programs. And you might not know it, but if a person with a disability has a retirement savings program, guess what? That's an asset that's counted towards that $2,000 limit. So people can use an ABLE account and make contributions, not only for things that they need now, but for the future. So it could serve as a retirement type vehicle to have money in their futures, whereas they may not be able to participate in a traditional retirement savings plan without getting into some trouble related to their assets and the benefits that they currently use. One of the things that ABLE programs provide in addition is that while money is in that ABLE account and it's placed in one of the options or more of the options that Linda described, that savings option or those investment options, the money that is earned on those monies in an ABLE account is tax-free while it's in the ABLE account. And when it comes out of the ABLE account, as long as those expenses are what we consider to be qualified disability related expenses. And let me just give you some news there. Those expenses are anything that supports the person with the disability, the account holder, in things that support them in health, independence, and quality of life. And man, there isn't much that doesn't, right? So it's a wide variety. No pre-approval from us to use those monies. People are using those monies freely and maintaining the information about their expenses so that should they ever get that dreaded tax audit, they would be able to support how their monies were used. In addition to the earnings growing without tax penalties, there are also 20 states and the District of Columbia that have a tax deduction credit, and that's a state tax deduction credit. There is no federal, but a state tax deduction credit for people who contribute to an ABLE account. So if you remember earlier, we said it's not just the person with the disability who's able to contribute to that basic $17,000. It's family, friends, anyone who might want to contribute. And when I say anyone, I got news for you. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So if you think about ABLE as part of your inclusion opportunities, part of the services that you offer as an inclusion and support of people with disabilities. There's several things that you can do to help you in that. One is to partner with us at Able Today. And as I said, we are happy from the state perspective to come and do virtual presentations or on-site presentations in some cases to your BRGs, ERGs, company-wide, to whomever. If you have a family or caregiver group or anything like that, to help them learn about this program. We do not expect the employer to have full breadth of knowledge of what this program is. That's up to us. That's on us. So it really is a very light lift for an employer to include this in their process, particularly in your onboarding process. If you think about your benefits package, and as a company, you might be thinking about how much that benefits package costs per employee. Well, including information about an ABLE program costs you absolutely nothing, but gets you so much respect from the employee who receives it and can benefit from it. And when we think about all those surveys that talk about why people want to work for a company or what sustains them in a company, one of the things is that I feel cared about as a person. And this is a benefit that definitely shows you understand and care about someone with a disability and the life that they lead and the challenges that they face. In the workplace, there is the opportunity in our ABLE programs to make direct deposits to ABLE accounts. You may have employees who are full-time employees, you may have part-time employees, you may have contractual employees who are caregivers or people with disabilities. And we offer all kinds of options so that it is flexible whether a person wants to identify a number amount to be direct deposited or just a percentage of their paycheck, knowing that sometimes for people with disabilities, that pay may vary and they may not have a standard amount of pay. So we're really geared and focused on the actual work experience for many people with disabilities in the workplace. And then here's where you come into play. There are some employers who give matching contributions or some sort of incentive in terms of different programs within their company or within their state. You might do matching for retirement. You may do matching for other kinds of special savings plans or things like that. They can be made into an ABLE account as well by an employer. Next slide, please. So let's think about how you can really expand your disability, diversity, inclusion, and equity and accessibility strategies across your company. Can you click again, Chris? I think this may have been something that didn't come up. Thank you, appreciate that. We can partner with you, as I said, to do training sessions or educational sessions. So we can do all of the things I've talked about in terms of hosting. And if you're a company that spans multiple states, within ABLE Today, we have the capacity to do a general ABLE presentation similar to the one you heard at the beginning of this session and bring on the states as a backup or an opportunity for breakout rooms to learn more about individual state programs. All you need to do is let us know the states where you operate and we can work that out. So you're not limited. We represent California and Texas and Maryland here, but there are 46 other people kind of like us out there, plus the person for the District of Columbia, forgot about that, Dante, who could also be here and lead a discussion in a breakout room if you chose to have one session across all of the nation in the states in which your company operates. Another thing that companies can do, and recently Sarah and I had the opportunity to be at Disability Inns conference last week in Orlando, and we talked to some companies who said, we can imagine including information about your program or updates about your program in our company newsletters or attaching information in our company websites. All of those kinds of things, we will develop the materials and provide them to you. So it's just a matter of you putting it in there or connecting with it, making it as easy as possible for you. Because we know our job is to help people open accounts. But another part of our job is partnering with people like you as employers to get the word out. That's one of the most difficult challenges we have as ABLE program directors, because many of us are very limited in the resources that we have and the staff that we have. I think if I speak of our 3 states, with the 3 of us, we probably don't have more than 6 people to cover all 3 of our states in terms of outreach. We may have some part-time people or some other people who assist, but basically we're it. So we need partnerships to make this happen. In terms of that payroll deduction, you can offer it on all plans. So even if you're a multi-state provider, and the good news is last week we spoke to ODEP, most of whom you have doing your payroll, and they're really excited about this too. So we're looking for that partnership. You can utilize one state's plan if you choose, if most of your employees are in one state. Some of you have, like I said, multiple states that you touch, and others have maybe a single state or just 1 or 2. So you could choose to have one state's plan as a company if that's how you want it to go. We do encourage people to research the states that they live in, because as we mentioned, those tax benefits can be really critical and important for people with disabilities. Every little bit helps. And we can help you to utilize that multi-state platform. So any way that it works for you, we can help make that happen. In terms of contributions and matches, just a little bit more, it could be a one-time, somebody enrolls. Sometimes individual programs will have, we deposit $50 in your account if you open an ABLE account kind of thing, just to incentivize people to get started on their savings. We do know that most people who have disabilities incur significant expenses throughout their lifetime, and therefore may be underbanked or be leading a life without a lot of extra cash laying around. So we might have to help some people initially get started and figure out how to be more of a saver in this situation. Some companies have ongoing matching contribution plans. So there is an opportunity. We know a company in Florida that currently will match up to $1,000 of the employee's contribution in a contribution to their ABLE plan. And then some places are looking at it as just part of their rewards and recognition programs for others. However you do it would be much appreciated, I'm sure, by an ABLE account holder, but is not necessary. It's not absolutely critical for having people have this information. These are just ways that you as a company can embrace and be more included in this program with your employee. Next slide, please. So next slide, please. So as we partner with you, we ask you to join with ABLE Today, help people to understand they can go on to the abletoday.org website and they can look at all of the programs. There is a synopsis and a summary of each state's ABLE program. We'll tell you what our limits are in terms of the maximum amount of money saved in the account, what the fees are, and how those fees work, what the investment programs are offered by that particular state, and if there's a tax incentive for that state. So help people learn about that. And as I said earlier, spread that word. We need you to help us, whether it's through email, social media, with your network, with your newsletters, on those screens that some people have in the hallways while they're standing at the elevator in a big corporation, something to flash up like that. And most of all, know that you can always reach out to us. Sarah has agreed to be our point person here and take these emails. So flood her email box with requests, because we're so excited to be able to partner with you guys and have you be a partner with ABLE and ABLE Today and ABLE programs throughout the country. I'm now going to turn it back over to Andrew to give him an opportunity to tell you a little bit more about the Disability Inclusion Pledge. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. I goofed. So we have another slide here. So let's just talk about where those resources are. If you want to learn more about some of the things we've talked about, again, there's abletoday.org videos. As Sarah mentioned, we do have an ASL video that is posted, and there are other videos that are testimonials from able account holders across the country and other things to help you. Other explanation videos about our program, please take advantage of those. We also have information about those federal benefits we talked about. And that is on abletoday.org, as well as the information about each of the ABLE programs. So now, Andrew, take it away.
Thank you, Betty Ann. So I mentioned this earlier, but I do really want to stress again how easy it is to access these resources, to start offering ABLE accounts, and to take the Disability Inclusion Pledge. You can find all the resources that I mentioned earlier and several resources from ABLE Today and ODEP at pledgeinclusion.shrm.org. That's pledgeinclusion.shrm.org. Please, by all means, take the pledge today. Encourage others to see the resources, spread awareness, and I'm really looking forward to starting to collect those success stories from organizations that have actually implemented and built out their disability inclusion programs. I'm always here as a resource. You can reach me at andrew.aragon, that's ANDREW.ARAGON at SHRM.org. And thanks again to ABLE Today and NAST for having us here today. And thank you to all of our speakers.
Thank you, Andrew. And I think we can go on to the next slide. Certainly before we wrap up, and I thank our sponsors, Betty Ann, Linda, Dante, I just wanted to, we've had such an active chat and ongoing conversation, and we've all been typing away as fast as we possibly can. But I thought we got a couple of great employer specific questions that I just wanted to moderate here quickly, and then we'll certainly wrap up at the top of the hour. Betty Ann, this might be a great question for you along the lines of the content that you presented. But can employers set the ABLE accounts up with an employer match to mirror their 401k offered plan? And if yes, would the organization then qualify for a tax credit for the matching contribution? A couple of questions regarding tax credits. So I'm going to let you jump in, Betty Ann, and take that one. And maybe we're getting Betty Ann off.
Here she goes. She just forgot to unmute herself. We're all human, right? Okay, so yes, to the answer to the first question, people can make those contributions as they would to a person who had a typical retirement program. That is included as part of the income for the person. So it's claimed as income and therefore would have the same kind of tax, tax exposure, I should say, that any other type of income or benefit would.
Thank you, Betty Ann. One thing that I did want to mention, a couple of folks had questions about the payroll deduction option. I dropped in the chat a link directly to ABLE Today. We have on our website all of the payroll deduction forms for each ABLE state program. I know it sounds like the Missouri link is broke. Thank you, Tom. We will get that certainly fixed. That is a resource to you that we certainly want you to use, and would be happy with the team here and others to work with you and your employer to help embed those into your workplace onboarding process. One more question, and then we will wrap up here. Betty Ann, does the matching contribution affect the ability of an employee to contribute more than $17,000 per year? I just want to make sure that we answer that question accurately, because I know it can be confusing on where contributions can come from.
So the 17,000 would encompass any money that the employer contributes. That would be part of that 17,000. But if the person is working, remember, they're able, as Dante said, to actually make an additional contribution up to their gross income for the year not to exceed in the continental US $13,590 this year. So it would impact the 17,000 limit, but they still, as a working employee, have the ability to go and do an able to work contribution, which gives them that 13,000 up to $13,590 each year.
Thank you, Betty Ann. I know we probably didn't get to every question in the chat. I certainly will stay on and respond to those. And of course, you all will have our contact information. So please, please, please feel free to reach out at any point in time. No question is too small or too big, especially for this group of experts. As we wrap up today, again, thank you to our co-host, to Andrew and the team at SHRM for helping us make this possible. We've had such a great turnout and a great response to this first time webinar around ABLE and employers. I would be remiss if I didn't give a huge thank you to our ongoing sponsors, Wells Fargo, Bestwell, and Transamerica for supporting our outreach in the employer space. The last slide here, as I said, you can contact us at any time. You'll see my information and Andrew's information listed on this last slide. Chris, if we could advance it just one more time, please reach out to us at any point in time. I also want to give a huge thanks to our guest speakers, to Dante, to Linda, to Betty Ann. As they will tell you, they are three of many different colleagues and friends in the ABLE State program space that are doing this type of outreach day in and day out to help grow the ABLE program. So we're grateful to the three of you, but we're also grateful to all of our state ABLE partners from across the country. We really appreciate everyone's time and your excitement about the National ABLE program, and we certainly look forward to posting this content on our abletoday.org website, as well as the Pledge Inclusion site, and we will be in touch with further information. So again, thank you to all our speakers, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.